Can anybody hear me?
No, Lisa, we cannot hear you.
Thanks.
Everybody.
Here's his name tag.
We got Lisa, Rebecca, Carl. Pardon?
Hey, Jerry.
Nobody
Can't see anything.
see that. Smells nice over here. Bleach,
Well, it should, because I just cleaned it for you.
chlorine. My blue shirt gets spotted at her, I can,
Eau de Clorox.
hey, it's a like great smell. Chlorine.
That hand sanitizer out by the door actually smells good. I'm like, what is that?
Chlorine.
Oh, yeah.
It is still different though. How do we get on the Zoom here?
Yeah.
I think we
Not
got
any longer?
everybody.
She set it up now so it's all coming out of that camera, right?
Okay.
We can hear you just fine. It's just a little hard to see it.
Yeah.
Who is Carl?
Say what?
We got some Boy Scouts with us.
Great.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
read your emails.
I don't remember
Did
that.
this morning.
I read mine all yesterday.
They wanted Mike to come and speak to them as part of one of their.
You don't need to hear me. You need to hear everybody else.
Ooh, sound nice.
All right, I think we're all ready to go. Mr. Mayor, are you ready?
Ready. Call the regular meeting of January 14th, 2021 to order. If you would all please rise with me and recite the pledge if you're ready. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with a roll call. Miss Atchison, I see you're on Zoom.
Here.
Thank you. Miss Conley.
Here.
Mr. Gross.
Here.
Mrs. Nixon.
Here.
Mrs. Powell.
Here.
Mrs. Race.
Here.
Mr. Hall is here. All is present. Thank you. Moving on to public comment. The council welcomes and encourages the public to speak during the public comment of the public hearing portion of the agenda. However, council policy is to hear public comment, not to act on the public comment at this time. Concerns brought before the council during the public comment portion of the agenda will be referred to the city manager for action. If, after communication with the city manager, no resolution is reached, the concerns will be elevated to the mayor and eventually to the council for action. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda or non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time that during the council meeting that citizens are allowed to address the council. Please state your name and address for record if you so would like. I need to get in the mail. Go ahead, Mr. Womack.
Jerry, I have a.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I will call out people that I see. I see Donna Clark. Would Ms. Clark like to make a public comment?
I would. I'll try to keep it under 4 minutes. First of all, my heart was very warmed when I came to work one morning and it had been snowing and the DPW had already been there and taken care of it. And then just recently we had that kind of an ice storm. And I actually saw Perry fall down on Main Street. And I thought, man, as I was going to work and I thought, oh my goodness, it's really slippery. And I thought, I think I have enough salt. And I got there and the DPW had already salted for us. And I just want to publicly say how much I appreciate the DPW. They also put a baby changing table in for us and have checked out things for us. And then we've been able to work with some other partners to get a leak in the men's restroom, and the ceiling was fixed by North Kent Mechanical at no cost. Anyway, we have a great community and we have great partners. And I thank all of you. I hope that all of you will go in and see the, hit the link that the library staff and I put together, just celebrating partners, celebrating the last 3.5 years at the library. We love being there. We love our new library and we wouldn't be there if it weren't for the partnership of all of you. And just thanks to Darla, who really helps me keep track of the financials. And I think that she'll be able to put a good word in for us tonight, to, so that we can keep keep living in this beautiful building that our community and you have afforded us. And I just want to say, give you a few really quick statistics from Christmas. We had such a great Christmas. We started with 230 little kids because we thought at least 230 kids would come in and get Christmas kits. And 230 were gone in like a week. And then the friends had a rush meeting and ordered in a day and a half. We got back another batch of special things to put in our bags. And we ran out in 2 days. So we gave out 400 Christmas bags with all kinds of goodies in them and things. And even our city manager came in and took some for his family and actually made a donation, which was just amazing. Anyway, let's get back to Santa. We had story times with Santa. We had him 3 times. Of course, it's Doug, don't tell anyone else, but he made a great Santa. And he had a story time 3 times. And 1,202 children attended. And you can Zoom with Santa. If you can't sit on his lap, you can Zoom with him. And we had 87 kids over 2 days come, and he studied all the questions that they might ask and he pulled it off. And then we had our Christmas sing-along. We had 678 people sing along with us. And we took 300 Christmas cards to Metron, thanks to Chandel, who gave us the idea. And we even had some left over that we could take to the brook. Also, I'm kind of celebrating because, in the past, with KDL being all around us, we can go there, they can come to us. They've been doing just curbside recently. And this is like the most stunning statistic. We checked out 300 items from them in December. Usually it might be 1,000 or 500 or whatever in the past, not so long ago past, but our people checked out Solon and City, 300 items from them. And guess how many they checked out from us? 1,500. I know. Okay, I'm done. Thank you, everybody. I'm excited about the fire station. I keep looking at it, and as I'm going by, I try to drive carefully, though.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Next, I have up Carl Prowant. Carl Prowant, would you like to make a public comment?
I'm just going to interject really quickly. The picture behind me on the Zoom is the new fire station.
Carl Prowant, do you want to make a public comment at this time?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I have Andrew Cassidy. Would Andrew Cassidy like to make a comment?
Okay.
I have William Osech. Would William Osech like to make a public comment?
No.
And I have Ryan Gorby. Would Ryan Gorby like to make a public comment?
Yes. How does the community?
Want to finish?
I forgot.
How is the community helping affect the food banks or people that are hungry during COVID?
Okay, thank you for that question. Mr. Hall, would you like me to try to answer that?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. Gorby, the city works with a couple of outside groups, one of which is the Community Impact folks. They're up on North Main Street. We also work with the Ministerial Association and some other charities, most of which are churches. We also have a couple of businesses in town that not only donate money, but they also help fundraise for food that can be brought to those businesses, and those are then redonated to other groups. So the city knows a lot of these people and a lot of these businesses, and so we're able to call up and kind of coordinate things. And of course, a lot of the folks that are involved with government, they're very concerning, very loving people. And a lot of the people in government also donate to these causes. So those are a couple of the ways that we try to help people get food when they're hungry during COVID.
Yes, and Myers is a very big sponsor of the food banks in this community.
Okay, Mr. Gorby, do you have any other further questions?
No, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, that is all the people that I see available online, unless there's anybody in the council chamber.
Yes, we have one person, Mrs. Powell. You gotta stand close to the camera so they know what you're talking about.
Can anybody see this?
Yeah. Yeah, use that mic.
There we go. Last month at City Council, I did mention the blood drive, and it was such a success. Our blood drive expectations increased from like 27 to 45. So the blood drive is Tuesday at the Methodist Church from around noon to 7 o'clock. You can go on the VerCity website. If you say university, it's VerCity. And you can go on their website, look up VerCity blood drive or blood donation. You can go on the page, search for Cedar Springs, very simple, and pick a time when it's convenient for you to go in. Right now, we're very anxious to get the COVID plasma, convalescent plasma. And if you can do that, we sure would appreciate it, because these folks love Cedar Springs and we want to keep it that way. So thank you, everybody.
Mr. Manager, is there a way we could put a link to the blood drive calendar on our city calendar or on our city website?
I don't know if we can incorporate their calendar into our calendar, but the city Facebook page does very regularly post their drives that we know are coming. That's been one of the pet projects that myself and the clerk are very interested in, and I regularly give blood myself.
Okay, Mr. Womack, any other persons wishing to address the council at this time at public comment?
I don't believe so.
Okay, moving on to item 4. We do not have any public hearings this evening, correct?
That is correct.
All right, moving on then to item 5. Adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions?
I do not have any additions.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Nixon, second. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as written. Have a roll call vote. Any further discussion before I call the roll? Hearing none. Mrs. Atchison.
Yes.
Mrs. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon.
Yes.
Ms. Powell.
Yes.
Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda. Mr. Womack, any questions or concerns? Any council members? Any questions on any of the items on the consent agenda? Or
I guess I would only comment that Jason Rowington and I had a good conversation. He seems like a nice, intelligent young man. I believe he works for one of the well drilling companies here local in town, lives in the city. And then Mr. Tom Wilkes, he works for the Busy Moms Bakery. They've been a success story in our downtown. And I think that he will do well on the Downtown Development Authority.
thank you. Any further questions on the approval of the consent agenda this evening? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent as written.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Support.
Ms. Atchison. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion before I call the roll? Hearing none. Ms. Atchison.
Yes.
Ms. Conley. She nodded her head yes. Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon.
Yes.
Ms. Powell.
Yes.
Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, motion carries. Moving on then at this time to action items. Number 7A, Mr. Womack.
So this would be the church that is located on the southwest corner of Muskegon and Main Street. They are currently zoned as an R1 property, and they had requested to put a much larger sign up than they currently have. And so we had a discussion. I told them that if they were rezoned as a B3 property, that they could have the larger commercial type signs. And so that's the primary reason that they're pursuing this. I understand that they will remain a church, although I think they're going to be changing their name. And it does make sense from a zoning and a planning perspective. And the Planning Commission approved of this recently. I can't remember if it was 2 days ago or at the 29th meeting, but Planning Commission has recommended it.
Yes. Yes, we had talked to them. They had came to the Planning Commission, and basically they're just adding Cedar Springs Baptist or Cedar Baptist to that effect, and they'll be putting a sign on the corner of 17 and Main, correct?
I believe so, yes.
I was changing the zoning and allows them to do that. Any questions? What's the will of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve 233 South Main Street rezoning request from R1 to B3.
Second.
Thank you. Been moved and seconded to approve the rezoning resolution for 23 South Main. Any questions or concerns? Roll call vote. Mrs. Atchison.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Powell.
Yes.
Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes. The motion carries. Moving on to item B. Mr. Womack.
I believe that this resolution to modify the charges for municipal services includes the Planning Commission stipend for their attendance at meetings, which I believe we have set at $50 per meeting. Ms. Falcon, am I correct in that? Yep, there we go. Planning Commission stipend, $50 per meeting. So this is something we talked about. The Planning Commission does a lot of hard work. And frankly, we should have probably done this 2 years ago. And I think it's going to be an overall beneficial thing. It's a minor amount of money to, to a certain extent, but I think it will encourage people to stick around and put the effort in. We've been very blessed in having good, high quality Planning Commission members through the years. And I think this will ultimately be good for the community.
Mr. Romax, I will not be able to vote on this item because I am on the Planning Commission and I would receive compensation from this. So I would abstain.
So for other people who are thinking about abstaining, I would point out that there is no requirement that anybody approve of your abstention. You can decide to abstain of your own free will. But just because you or somebody you might be related to might make money because of this doesn't necessarily have to be a reason to abstain.
Correct.
You can announce your relationship, and if the rest of council is aware of that, I believe that would be sufficient to still vote for it. And the reason, of course, I mentioned this is it's a small town. Lots of our board members have husbands or wives or family members who serve on that board. And we frankly might not be able to pass the motion otherwise. So I want you to think about that. And if you want to, you can make an announcement prior to your vote.
Thank you. What's the will of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-04, a resolution to revise the 2020 fees and charges for municipal services.
Second.
Mrs. Ashton.
I have one question.
All right, it's been moved in second. Any discussion? Mr. Groves.
I have one question. Mr. Manager, will this include all special meetings as well, or just regularly scheduled?
It appears to be all meetings.
That's why I read it, and I agree with it. I just wanted to make sure that was the case, that the verbiage was meeting what was intended to be.
Yep. So originally we had talked about 12 meetings at $50 per meeting and max out at $600 per year. But that was originally under the mistaken belief that if we did that, we wouldn't have to, 1099 or W-2 them. Unfortunately, that was not the case. We have to do that regardless. So I guess I changed my mind. I figure if they're going to go to a 13th meeting, they deserve to be paid for a 13th meeting.
I have no disagreement with that. I just wanted to make sure it was going to cover them.
I agree. It's a great for this to finally happen. I think it's overdue. There's no financial gain for me in this. I'll abstain from it because being the mayor, I don't want innuendos to that I forced it through. Thank you. Any other further discussions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I keep thinking about, 5-6 years ago when there was like a planning commission meeting, maybe every other month. So now it's a little bit more intense, and I'm glad to see this going through if we voted in.
Very much so. Any other further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to declare if the manager doesn't feel that it's necessary that we abstain, I won't abstain. But my husband is the chair of the Planning Commission. And I think they should get paid. I would think that if my husband were not the chair, I think they do a huge amount of work. And I think we need to, on some level, acknowledge that it's a huge amount of work. I sat on the school board when there was no pay. And I think there is a certain level of professionalism that comes with even a small amount of pay, of an expectation. And I think this provides that, which is important. It adds some credibility and heft to the job. So, but I did want to say that my husband is currently, was voted in Tuesday night to be the chair of the Planning Commission.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Conley did step up to be the chair. Any other questions before
I do. I have a comment.
Go ahead, Mrs. Thatcher.
Yes, he was.
I did serve on the Planning Commission for quite a while, and I think it is time to that they get some sort of pay, because most planning commissions in the area are getting some sort of pay. And if we want them to put the time in that's necessary, especially with our growing city, we need to give them something for their time.
Yes, indeed. Unfortunately, we have recruited very good council persons to our council from the Planning Commission, you being one and Mrs. Race being one and myself. It's long overdue and muchly appreciated for what the work they do every month. Any other person wishing to comment?
Yes, I would like to say that, like Mrs. Connolly, my husband does serve on the Planning Commission, so I do have a little bit of a financial gain that could potentially come from this. However, in the interest of our community moving forward and being able to recruit sufficient people to the Planning Commission and compensate them for the considerable work that gets put in, I think it's in the best interest of our community.
Yes, Mr. Nixon, I might add too that your husband also is the vice chair on the Planning Commission. Thank you all.
One more comment, if I could.
Mr. Gross.
Mr. Manager, I also believe that, if I understand correctly, that a portion of, if not all of the finances of the payments for these would come from actually the applicants, if there's an application that's being considered, as far as part of the expenses that applicant puts forth. Is that not correct?
So we don't have a specific fee that they pay to attend these meetings. And I'm sure Ms. Falcon has the numbers somewhere, but each time one of these goes in front of the Planning Commission, they do pay a certain number of fees. And so the Planning Commission does have an income. I don't know if it would match up with what's going to be paid to the members. I mean, I could get you that information, but they do bring, with the amount of work they've been doing, they do bring in some decent amount of money with the site plans that they review. So I would guess it's probably close to breaking even now with this payment. And of course, that's after many years of accepting payments and not paying the members.
Part of the reason for the comment was to let the folks that may happen to be listening or may go back in the future, is that there are means of covering this, and it isn't all of their tax dollars are paying for these people work, although it would not be unfair for us to pay them as taxpayers. Thank you.
Yeah, in that regard, I would agree. For the absolute majority of this would be paid directly by the applicants. Very little of it will ever be paid by the citizens of Cedar Springs.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns or opinions before I call the vote? Therefore, seeing none, I will call the roll. Mrs. Atchison.
Yes.
Mrs. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon.
Yes.
Ms. Powell.
Yes.
Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall abstain. Thank you all. Moving on to the next item, C, motion to approve the library lease agreement. Mr. Womack.
So as you all recall, 3 years ago, we weren't 100% sure about the library's ability to operate on a year-to-year basis with the amount of money that they had coming in. So the original lease agreement was written that 3 years, and then if they were continuing to operate successfully after 3 years, the library could request and require a 5-year extension. However, that required a 6-month advance notice and just wasn't put on the correct calendar. So that unfortunately lapsed, which means that now we as a city have the authority, if we want to kick the public library out of the library building and take that over for, I don't know, a gymnasium or something. Sure would make a nice city hall. So I have redrafted the library agreements and changed very minor things. The biggest one being the term. So under the original agreement, there was a 3-year and then a 5-year extension. And then after that, it would go indefinitely. So I'm just kind of cutting out the middleman, and what's before you is an indefinite lease agreement with the library. And each party still retains a 6-month option to either vacate or kick out the library organization out of that building. So that's the majority of the changes that were made. A couple minor, commas and periods in other places, but I think Donna Clark would tell you that the library has been very successful where it's at. There's a whole PowerPoint in there. Not as many photographs of the city manager as I would have liked. She did.
Wow, only 5, yeah.
She did send me a number to my cell phone of the various things that I've done with and for the library. So I guess I'll put it to council, whether council believes that they've been successful at that location and whether we want to continue allowing them to use it. The building, of course, being owned by the city.
All right, what's the will of the council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the library lease agreement as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the library lease agreement. Any further discussion?
I just like to say I'm so unbelievably excited we have this new library building. We spent, 18 years getting it built, and it has been critical for this community, especially during this pandemic. And it's just, I'm thrilled that this was a thing we've finally been able to make happen.
I agree.
Yes, indeed. Any other discussion? My mask come off. All right, moving on. I'm going to call a roll call vote. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Atchison?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mrs. Race?
Yes.
With all votes yes, the motion carries. Moving on to item D. Motion to approve paying up to $7,500 for survey work to completion by City Engineers Fishbeck. Mr. Womack. I think I know what this is, but.
Yep. So I will first apologize. We did not plan for, we did not budget for this, but we've had a couple of opportunities here. And I think they're probably smart investments. The $7,500 represents the surveying fees that would be required as the first step of getting this accomplished. And so let me share my screen here and I can kind of walk you through what's happening.
I have been working on this for several years.
Okay, so can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's nice.
So this would be on the east end of Ash Street. And you'll see these two colored parcels. Right now, this is actually one piece of property. And what's happening is that the property owner, the mayor and I have long discussed adding this red piece here to the city park, which is to the north. So this would be Legacy Park, and citizens can walk from where Ash Street meets Ann Street right on through up to, I believe, Maple Street through our nature preserve. They have been doing so crossing over the property owned by the property owner. So the property owner has said, you know what, there's no use for this property, and he'd like to donate it to the city. Okay. So to do so, we would have to come up with a survey and a legal description for the deed that they would sign over this portion of the city. Okay. So that's the first part. Second part, which I'm still working on, is this parcel. So this parcel has been held for a long time with the idea of potentially turning it into a small neighborhood with, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses. But Mr. LaRose indicates to me that in this northeast corner here might be a great location for our next set of municipal water wells. So what I've thought about doing is, in addition to taking this parcel off their hands, that we might put a lease agreement or an option agreement on this piece of property for future purchase for the installation of some water wells. Okay. So to do that, first, we got to get some surveys. I think the estimated cost for this is about $2,500. There will be some additional legal fees down the road, but to get started, $25. Then this portion, and I know the graphics are amazing. You're welcome. So this is Cherry Street, the west end of Cherry Street. And I would like to punch Cherry Street all the way through to White Creek Avenue. This is something that I'm sure I've spoken with every single council member about. Mr. Hall has put a lot of footwork into this, and it is the future of our town. I don't know when it can happen. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to happen, but this is what's the next step. Now, right now, we've got a couple of property owners here who want to work with us, and I think they're willing to do it for free. We just have to come up with the legal arrangements, the survey work, and the descriptions. So this is a large survey, and this will cost about $5,000. So I want to get it done now. I don't want to wait for the future, and I just think it's the right smart move to do. Unfortunately, right now we'd have to come out of fund balance. We've run a very conservative budget over the last couple of years. We've never had money problems. So I don't think it's an issue paying for it. I just need council's go ahead to, I guess, pay for it out of fund balance. Ms. Falcon, do you have any comments about how to pay for it or anything?
Nope, no comment. Fund balance would be great. About the only source we have.
And by only source, she means the only source that, because it wasn't budgeted, we don't have any other large $7,500 funds to draw from.
Correct.
On both of these parcels, I've been talking to several people in the future and in the past. The one in particular off of Beach Street, our well fields already are out there. So we would have to acquire a very large parcel to put another well in. You have to have a 300-foot buffer around the wells. And Eagle currently is telling us that we need to put a new well in because our number 3 well was drilled in approximately 1938, and it's coming of age, let's put it that way. So in the future, we will be required to put another well in. And with that parcel, I think that would be our next big logical portion. And Mr. Womack will have Fishbeck do some hydrogeo work out there to make sure it's a suitable site before we accept that other chunk.
Yep, so what we would be doing is we'd be purchasing an option on it, meaning that they wouldn't be able to sell to anybody else until that hydrological study was completed. And Mr. LaRose, I think we're working on that hydrology studies already, aren't we? Pretty sure we are.
I think so.
Yes, Mike, it's part of the reliability study and some other things. Should be completed this year, I believe.
Okay, what's the will of the council?
I will make a motion to approve $7,500 to come out of fund balance, an amount not to exceed $7,500 to come out of fund balance for surveying work to be completed by the city engineer at Fishbeck.
Support.
Nixon, thank you.
I have a question.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Mrs. Rice.
Just curious how long it takes to do a survey like this. You know?
I honestly don't know. I would imagine a couple days to do each one. And then, of course, on top of these, we're going to be doing another large survey of the West Street project for the business park.
Yep.
But we've already had the funding approved for that out of the total project cost. So I won't have to come back to you for that one. And it takes a couple days.
Okay. I just was curious.
I would just like to say thank you to the mayor and the city manager and the DPW director for the forward-thinking view on this regarding needing another well. I take our water access very, very seriously. And I appreciate, especially as our community grows, that we're going to need an additional well. And I appreciate that forward thinking. I also appreciate that we are moving forward on a Cherry Street extension. That's needed to happen for probably 10 years. So this is just absolutely every piece of this needs to happen and is worth every penny of the $7,500.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question?
I have a question for the city manager or the DPW director. Would this ground support a second tower as far as water storage? Somewhere along the line here, we're probably going to have to consider that also. Would that be a good location for the tower also if we were to do it?
I don't think so. Mr. LaRose, I'm sure, has a better understanding, but I believe we're looking at school property for a second water tower. And barring that, I'd like to see the water tower out in the HC district. Mr. LaRose, you have a comment?
Yeah, just exactly what you said, Mike. And there's other issues that we look at. Water main already existing. You have to have a 12-inch or larger generally to run from the tower. And that's already existing at the school. I feel it'd be an easy agreement with the school to put it on their property. And that's kind of where we're looking for the second tower option.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, in years past, hydrology flows for the system, I believe the engineers put it over by the school for hydrology.
Was that prior to the expansion out towards the expressway?
Yes, no,
okay.
No, it was.
With that in mind?
Before I left, yes.
With that in mind, okay, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The property on the end of beach, would we have to buy that whole lot or just part of it to put the wells on?
As Mr. LaRose indicated, there is, I'm sorry, maybe Mr. Hall indicated, there is a rule that the wells have to be separated by housing by, I think, 300 feet. Mm-hmm. Now, it is a good sized parcel. And if we put it into the northeast corner, we would not be obligated to purchase the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But it also depends on whether the property owner wants to sell only partial part of the property or not. So I guess it'll come to whatever the property owner might want to do, because that might be a good location for 3 or 4 homes, even with the well. So it's a part of the discussion we'll have with the property owner.
So when we go for the option, we'll go for the entire property at this time, or after the survey? I was just wondering, you know, if there's, I guess it's up in the future after it gets surveyed.
I suspect what we'll do is we'll put together an option for the property owner that will say we'll purchase the entire property at market value. Mm-hmm. And then if we get to a point where the hydrology is done and we see we could put it out there and still allow houses to be built out there, I'm sure that the property owner would work with us in changing that option agreement, because that would be to their benefit. Because we're certainly not opposed to more homes being built. Mm-hmm. We just have to do it in such a way as to protect our water tower or water pumps we plan to put out there. So I'd certainly be open to that, and we'll make sure that the option agreement is written in such a way as to permit that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? A roll call vote. Mrs. Atchison.
Yes.
Mrs. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon.
Yes.
Ms. Powell.
Yes.
Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, motion carries. Moving on then to any other business or action items to be brought before the council, Mr. Womack?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Moving on then to item 8, discussion items. Item A, fire inspection service agreement, Mr. Womack.
So this is something that I've wanted to accomplish for quite some time. The city is growing in leaps and bounds, and we have marijuana businesses coming in. We've got older buildings that I'm sure haven't had fire inspection in decades. And I wanted to have a fire inspection service ready to go that can start reviewing site plans for us, and then later on add a walkthrough inspection service to make the city fire safe. So I'm sure the fire department could talk about it more at length, but right now, the closest municipality that has fire inspectors that are willing to work with us would be Plainfield Township. We've sat down and chatted with those folks. They're easy to work with. They're professional. They know what they're doing. And this agreement would allow us to pursue allowing their firefighters to come in and help us out with some of these fire inspection services. So this could be an action item if you guys wanted it to be. There's no, I guess, dire need to complete it tonight, which is why I put it as a discussion item. Want to see if you guys want to pursue it at all. But I think it's the right thing to do. And then we will sit down and hammer out another agreement about how it would actually work on a day-to-day basis. But that should be fairly simple as well. So, Mr. Fraser, do you have anything to add to that?
No, sir, I don't. Working with Plainfield and knowing some of their officers, I believe this is going to be a win-win for the city at this time.
So council can, I guess, motion to approve if they'd like, but if not, you can discuss and we'll bring it back next month for approval.
What are the discussions?
City Manager, I'd like to, or sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose that we move this to an action item and make a determination on this evening. It's something that's past due and needs to be done.
I'm just curious about fees. Yeah. What kind of fees should we have before we put
Yep.
this
So that's the beauty about this agreement is it should not cost the city anything. The way we would do it is we'd start out in the first year or two having them review site plans for new buildings, and we would simply act as a pass-through, allow the applicants to pay for the service, and we would simply charge whatever their firefighters required, and then we'd pay them that way. So there should be no additional cost to the city or the city citizens at all. This should be paid for by the applicants for site plans. And then after 1 or 2 years, we should be able to transition to where the firefighters would walk through existing buildings and kind of point out things that they could do to be more fire safe. So haven't quite figured out how to pay for that part of it yet, but for the time being, it should be revenue neutral for the city.
Ask a question.
Well, yeah, we have right now. I think I'm curious to what the costs are, and there's some other people on the council that are costs. I was wondering if we could have the manager put together a cost per inspection and per site plan, so that we have a better understanding of what those costs are going to incur. And I think that's my thought.
Mr. Mayor, I'm willing to withdraw my motion. to move it into action based on the fact that it appears to be there's some discussion that the board would like to have more before approving it.
I think there's confusion more than any, so. Okay, thank you. Mr. Womack, if you could put us a package together for next month, agenda for action item.
Ms. Conley, did you have a statement or comment?
I have a question. So just, it's a point of clarification. And if we're not voting on it tonight, it could be answered later. But just to clarify, this is for new construction, like construction that's being built only, correct?
So, yep. So the plan right now is for the first 1 or 2 years, this would apply only to new site plans and new buildings. Okay. That way their firefighters would review the site plans, review the plans, and then after the building is built, do a walkthrough with the building inspector. And the applicant, the developer, would pay for all of those services in the same way that they pay for the city engineer, they pay for the city planner, they pay for the city attorney.
Sure. But just clarifying, I know that Chief Frazier has said in the past when we were talking about the need for our new fire station and the specifics of our fire truck, that we have a lot of older buildings in our community that have potential to be, I mean, I live in one that has potential to be fire, I don't want to call it a hazard, more likely to be flammable. And I just wanted to clarify, like, we aren't trying to head through and determine if every house needs a fire. I mean, this is strictly brand new construction.
So again, this agreement that you guys are looking at is really just an agreement that says the city is happy to work with the city of the township of Plainfield. That's all it says. After that, myself and Chief Frazier will sit down with their administrator and their fire chief and figure out how we're going to roll it out. So the plan is to do the new site plans right now. But then within 2 or 3 years, I'd like to see us start walking through all commercial buildings in the city. Because I would bet you that if I walked into the kitchen of some of these restaurants, we're going to find 6 extension cords coming out of one wall socket. I don't think that needs fire code. So another thing you're going to see probably at your next monthly meeting is an update from the, I'm sorry, Chief, is it 2006 fire code? We're going to update to that to the most recent fire code, which is 2018. And I think in 1 to 3 years, we should be going through every commercial building in town. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to go in and say, you know what, your building's really old. We're going to require you spend $100,000 to update it. I don't want to do that. But if we walk in and we find 6 extension cords coming out of one wall socket, I want to say, no, can't do that. So little stuff. I want to make the city safer. I do not want to cause significant financial hardships to any of the businesses.
If I may, part of the reason for my motion was because of my past history and current history of what's going on, my fire service time and things of that nature. I understand what you were promoting, and that's why I understood where most of the fees were going to come from and the fact that it was new construction. It is very difficult to go back into an old building that would be considered legal non-conforming based on its construction period at that time, and it must have been approved. But like the city manager has said, anything that you find that is out of the ordinary, overloaded circuits, things of that nature, are things that you can resolve in a hurry. And those are things that this inspector could do. And that was, I jumped the gun because I understood. So a little more discussion probably does not hurt. Or if even the discussion we had tonight makes a difference. So
yes, indeed.
I guess I just didn't know that the city would have to be involved in something like that. I thought a business did its own thing. I just didn't understand. I just don't understand that. So
may I answer that? The building code oftentimes is enforced by the building inspector.
Okay.
some of the building inspectors you have to have for a commercial building are supposed to have a higher quality of knowledge than that of a residential, simply because it is a public structure. The problems with that is you still should have, for anything like schools, things like that, where there's going to be people coming together, there should be somebody representing the fire department also and the city that walks along with the building inspector checking these buildings.
One more thing I would like to add. I don't want this to be a forever agreement. You know, I love Plainfield Township. They've got some great folks down there. What I would like to see eventually is I'd like to see one of our guys, one of our firefighters get the appropriate training that they can do it here locally. But that's a significant commitment, both in time and money. So I'm sure that Mr. Frazier and I can talk about that for the long term. But in the short term, I'd like to get Plainfield on board, and then we can start working on one of our guys.
Personally, I feel if it's just to proceed with the service agreement so that they can, I think we should be able to do that action still. That's just me. Because there is more coming down the pipeline for more discussion.
Would it be appropriate for me to make that motion again, bring it to a vote, and if they choose not to, then we could table it?
I think
Well,
it would be fine.
if you choose not to, it isn't tabled. It's voted down.
It could come back next month then.
Yes, but it's not tabled.
Okay.
It could be postponed.
It'll be brought.
If it's voted no, it can't be postponed. It could be asked again.
Yes.
But it's still voted down.
Okay. What we have done is we've gotten past the idea that a resolution was given and brought for a vote and discussion, or a discussion and vote. If we've done the discussion without it ever being determined as a resolution.
Mr. Gross, could I interject for a second?
Sure.
Frankly, I mean, we could talk for 45 minutes about procedure, but it's kind of silly. How about we do this? Can we have a straw poll about whether you guys want me to pursue this at all? And if I get a positive straw poll, I'll put together the necessary information for the next meeting about costs, kind of a general plan of what we're doing on paper. And then you guys will have that and you can approve it at the next meeting. It'll take me at least a month to get that done anyways. So Mr. Hall, if that's fine by you, maybe a straw poll?
That would be fine. I think that'll be excellent. Okay, this will be a straw poll to determine whether Mr. Womack puts together a fire inspection service agreement. Everybody understand that?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Atchison, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Ms. Nixon?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mrs. Race?
Yes.
Mayor says yes. So, Mr. Womack, if you could put them together to make this a little clearer and clarify some questions or unknowns. And for the council, if anyone has any questions or concerns, I would say get with Mr. Womack to let him know your concerns.
Could you, when you bring it back to us, clarify what the specific training is? Like if we were to try to support one of our firefighters in getting that training, like how many hours is it? Do they have to go somewhere? Like how much does it cost? And again, I'm not advocating that the city necessarily pay for it, but just like what is the level of training? Is there any piece of it that the city could support? Could you include that to bring it next month?
Mr. Frazier, did you hear all that?
Yes, sir, I did. I don't have numbers right off the top of my head. I know 90% of my firefighters are working full time. It's going to be hard to have them take time off from their job.
Sure.
I feel that we need to pay that individual while he's at school. We have to buy text, we have to buy tuition. Like I said, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but we're talking thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Maybe Mr. Gross had a little better idea, because I know it was discussed when he held.
Thank you.
He was in charge here, so I'm going to kind of ask him if he's got a number. But I have been in conversation with Mr. Womack, and we have discussed this, trying to find somebody that would be willing to do that and take probably a week, maybe 2 weeks vacation from the regular job to go to school to do this. And at this particular point in time, like Mr. Womack referred to, we do not want to go into the mom and pop shop and start ordering things to be repaired. What you do is go in and make suggestions, and 30 or 60 days you go back to see if they're fixed, and if not, then you work with the individual and help them along, because as everybody knows, a lot of these stores and shops have been around for a lot of years, and most of them are getting by on a shoestring budget. And that was one thing I was pretty adamant about, that it'd be a good way to upset the general public, and I don't want to do that in no way, shape, or form. However, like Mr. Womack again said, that this would be new construction only.
Thank you. I think this is a first step, is to get this in place, and then we'll see where it goes as far as getting a person trained down the road. Okay. Sounds good? Yep. Any other questions? Moving on to item B, Mr. Womack.
Yep. So this is the social districts. Social districts is a new law that was passed just recently by the state of Michigan. It basically allows for a local community to dedicate and declare that certain portions of their outdoor space are a location where you could possess alcohol in the public sphere. So if anybody's been down to Rockford recently, they have one called, I think, Rora. They've been able to shut down their main street. They've put out tables and fire pits and all sorts of stuff. They also have, I think, 7 or 8 restaurants that can benefit from it. We really don't have that. So we have primarily the Redbird Bistro and the brewery. The brewery already has kind of the same idea set up on the side of their building. So it really only benefits the Redbird Bistro at this point. So that being said, I'm looking ahead because this law technically goes for 4 more years. So this is not just a winter drink outside while it's cold thing. This could be a many years thing. So I'm going to share my map here. So this is kind of the basic map I put together. And the point is, here on Main Street, we would have it extend all the way south to the American Legion. And on the opposite side of the road, whatever bar happens to be there, up to the Redbird Bistro, up to the brewing company. This means that people could walk up and down Main Street with an alcoholic beverage in hand. But you do have to designate a public space, essentially what Rockford has done. The problem is we can't shut down Main Street. They can. So I sent you guys all an email about a month back detailing the various places that I thought might possibly work. There's just not a lot of great public spaces here in the city. So I could talk you through each one if you want, but this is, you know, I think we'd all prefer a short meeting tonight. So I'll just talk through 2 right now. So this little blue area right here on Elm Street. So it's right in front of the Busy Mom's Bakery. It's halfway between the Redbird Bistro and the Cedar Springs Brewing Company. And I think we could shut it down between Main Street and the first alleyway there, no problem. So you would set up the road to be the public kind of congregation and drinking area. But of course, you would need tables, you would need chairs, you would need heating sources, you'd need road blockades, all sorts of things. I don't know if the city wants to pay for that. If the businesses want to pay for it, I'm sure we'd allow them to use Elm Street. I'm sure the bakery would be more than happy to serve donuts to people who are drinking beer. I don't know if we'd want to allow that to be closed indefinitely. We'd probably want to allow them to close it at maybe 6 p.m. and then reopen it at midnight or something like that. And so maybe this is a better idea for a Friday night or a Saturday night party in the winter, and allow these two restaurants to serve alcoholic beverages and takeaway containers. And we can kind of set that up as a little party location. Okay. Here's one of the problems though. Mr. Frazier, where is your fire station going to empty its trucks out onto? Exactly. Elm Street?
Yes, sir. That'd be north. The main doors are going to be north and emptying onto Elm Street, and either going east or west from there.
So if the new fire station is going to be emptying out onto Elm Street, I don't think we want to make that a permanent location to close down the road entering onto Main Street. So post April 1st or so, we're going to have to find a different location, even if we do use that for now. And so here's my proposal. If we allow people to purchase alcoholic beverages anywhere on Main Street, we could allow them to walk up to Maple Street and then designate the heart of Cedar Springs as our congregation zone. I think there's an amphitheater building or something out there that we'd like to put some concerts on at. And I don't see why we can't allow people to drink a beer while they're rocking to some music. So for the next 4 years, we might wish to have this be our congregation zone and allow people to grab a beer and go out there and drink it while they're watching a show. I think it will ultimately bring more people into town. I think it'll be good for our restaurants and our bars. And it's going to require some planning. And obviously we got to put together a plan similar to what Rockford put together. But I think it's something, at least a good idea worth pursuing. But obviously I need council's approval and any discussion you guys might have about it.
What about the staging area?
What about the staging area?
Is that something that could be used in that capacity or a part of it in that capacity?
So the problem with the staging area I felt was it's a little far from the Redbird Bistro.
Okay.
They're one of the ones who would mainly benefit from it. And the staging area is partially owned by the Department of Natural Resources. And I'd rather not take up a parking lot if possible.
Okay.
Parking lots, they're good because they're paved. They're bad because where are people going to park at?
Got it.
We also talked about the parking lot across from the brewery. But again, where do people park their cars? And it's right next to residential. So there's a bunch of little options on the west side of the fire station. Once they vacate, that would be a good location. Yeah, I looked at the map quite a bit. So yeah, sorry. Any other thoughts or comments?
I'm curious about the liquor laws and the licensing and the tap, they call it. Are you telling me we can just wander around town drinking? And I sure don't want to see anything blocking the fire barn under any circumstances. So.
Yep. So the law is pretty clear. Each bar or restaurant could serve an alcoholic drink. It has to be in a plastic container with their name on it. The maximum pour, I think, is 16 ounces. And each city has to come up with a pretty detailed plan about exactly how they're going to mark the territory and where they're going to put garbage bags and all sorts of stuff. So that's why this law is pretty revolutionary. You're right, Ms. Powell, that in the past, this was not a permitted thing. But I think it could be good overall. Here, let me share this. This is part of the plan that Rockford had put together.
I have a question.
I'm not sure how big you guys can see that, but you can see some of the rules that they have in place. I'm sorry, Mr. Hall?
Have we had any business owners in town request this?
So I had a sit-down discussion with both the brewery and the Redbird, and we talked about the possibilities. This was about a month ago, and they both kind of agreed it's a little difficult to get into this now for the winter, primarily because of the lack of a good location for it, which is why Elm Street between Main and the alley is about the only good location for the winter. But I think they were both fairly excited about the possibility of the concerts in the park idea. So yeah, we had a good, it was about an hour-long conversation.
I have a couple things as well. With Rockford, I was down there. They do have a nice setup. The only thing that's different between their setup and what we're looking at is it's going to be running down a main drag there. Main Street is heavy traffic for north and south, where Rockford doesn't really have that traffic. I know it's a little bit busier, but it's not that same traffic. And then when you have a restaurant, you go get your beer and you want to cross the street to go to the amphitheater, then you have people drinking and not paying attention, and we don't really have a certain crosswalk that's like slow it down for this cross traffic. So I'm a little concerned about that. Also, who's gonna kind of put it on? Who's gonna take care of these tables and chairs, stuff like that? And then also with the social district, is it like during a certain time of the year, or is it like we say it happens all the time? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, so again, something that I would have to put a lot of work into, but you're right. People crossing Main Street is an issue. We could kind of set it up like Halloween, where each concert we'd have a police officer out there. I'm sure that's going to cost a couple $100. And of course, the putting the concerts on themselves will cost a couple $100. I think if it's going to be out in the heart of Cedar Springs, we don't put tables or anything out. We allow people to bring their blankets, their lawn chairs, and they can sit on their blankets and lawn chairs and drink their beers and eat their food. So there was a lot of discussion about who's going to take care of the Elm Street location, because I don't want to pay for either police officers or for DPW time to put up these barricades and stuff and tables and whatever else, if it's only going to be benefiting two businesses.
Right.
I figured the businesses can pay for that. On the other hand, if we're going to be having concerts in the park, that is a public benefit. I think the entire community benefits from that. So this would be a side benefit of this. You know, we have talked previously about allowing food trucks to come park at the heart of Cedar Springs during concerts. Yep. So I don't see how this is any different. You allow.
That was going to be one of my questions. Could these two businesses who have the alcohol license already have like the equivalent of a food truck set up during concerts that also say has beer on tap that they could sell at that space?
So I don't think they can sell beer at the location under this law. I think at this law, they have to sell the beer at their own licensed facility. But as far as food truck, that was another thing I've discussed with them, is identifying a food item or a menu that they could set up on hot plates or something, so that we would allow them to set up essentially a food truck on a table at the location. But as far as alcohol, I believe they have to serve it at their restaurant and then walk it over.
I guess I have two questions, comments I would like to make. One, we're pretty specific on mentioning the two facilities that are the closest. We're not taking into consideration that if by chance a location across from City Hall here now opens up in the same capacity, the fact that they're that much farther away, along with the Legion. I don't think it's user friendly for all of them to get involved with as much. And the other concern I have is that if we're going to have concerts in the park, part of what we want to do is draw families in to participate. Is this a family-friendly atmosphere that we're generating with the need for alcohol and stuff to be there while they're watching it? I mean, these are things that is running through my mind also. I guess I don't have a problem with something. I don't want it to affect what we're trying to do for the park as far as family-friendly type activities too. So that's my thoughts.
Okay.
We've gone a long way with this.
I think, you know, our road network won't work with what Rockford has. It never will. We have a county primary going through here, and to draw lines and maintenance, I think physically our road system won't accept it. So that's my 2 cents. Okay, any other discussion on this social distancing issue?
Well, I guess my question is this something that the board wants me to pursue or not?
Okay, I'll ask Ms. Atchison, you think we should pursue this or just move on with other business?
Yes.
We should pursue. Okay. Ms. Conley?
Yes, I think we should pursue it.
Mr. Gross?
No.
Mrs. Nixon?
No.
Ms. Post, I need Mrs. Reyes.
I think it doesn't hurt to look more into it.
Yes or
So
no?
yes.
Please. Pardon?
Yes.
The mayor says no. Currently, we're
That Rose.
We're 3 to, yeah, we'll wait for Mrs. Powell.
She's gonna break the tie.
Did Mrs. Powell vote?
Yeah, this is a straw, whether to have the manager continue.
We're waiting for Mrs. Powell.
Has she stepped out of the room?
Yes.
Waiting. See, that's why I didn't want to step out of the room.
We knew we were gonna call on her. Don't let her bother. Don't let her bother. We're waiting on you.
We're just waiting for a vote
on whether to have Mr. Womack pursue with this Laura social distancing.
Like, just look into it.
Yeah, we can look into it. I thought we were
All
just doing a discussion.
All right. Ms. Powell says yes. So Mr. Womack, you can look into this and try to come up with a better solution.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on then to C, municipal civilian infractions. Civil.
So I'll keep saying it that the code enforcement officer and I have done our absolute best to give warnings and cajolings and pleases and letters and anything we can do except write tickets. Unfortunately, there are some people who just do not want to follow the law. So we've gone to court a couple times now, and our first offense civil infraction is $50. I looked around to all the surrounding communities, and ours was by far the lowest. The next lowest was $100. And so I think maybe we're just a little out of date. You know, we try desperately not to write tickets in this community, but sometimes it's necessary. And I think $50 is just a little too low sometimes. So I have redrafted this with some additional language, and I've increased the fines. It would go from, I believe, $50 to $125, and then a second offense would be $250, and a third offense $500. So I've eliminated one step. It used to be a 4-step program, now it's 3. And this matches up very closely with Rockford and Greenville and Sparta and all of our surrounding communities. So I'd like to know if council would like to see this again for possible passage into law.
Do you have the date when we last updated this?
I can look, if you give me a second.
I think for next month. You're asking to have this on the agenda for next month for approval?
Yeah, I mean, I already wrote the law. I've already done the work. But it's just a question of, is this something that council wants to move forward on? I guess I could just bring it back to you for a vote next month, but it's always nice to know whether I've wasted my time or not.
Like so, if you write a ticket to somebody for $50.
Yep.
Is that a one-time thing, or do they get that $50 charge every month until they have solved the problem?
No, so that's a one-time thing. They go to court, and the judge will order that they pay a $50 fine. Mm-hmm. Now, there's some additional court costs and other stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a one-time thing.
Okay.
Which is really, I mean, I hate to say it's unfortunate, but the poor code enforcement officer, she'll give 6, 7, 8 notices to people, and they just simply do not want to clean up the whatever, you know? And so we very, very rarely write these tickets. And I would just like to have a little bit of teeth in them when we do.
So does $50 cover our cost to bring these people to court?
Oh, absolutely not. No. The city pays the city attorney separately apart from this. You know, no, this does not cover our costs at all, which is why it's very difficult for me to want to write tickets, because it actually ends up costing the city money for the most part.
If it was $100, would that cover our cost?
No, I don't think any of these, except for maybe the 500, would cover our actual costs. Now, what we try to do is we try to write multiple tickets at the same time, so that if we do end up sending our city attorney to court, that they're doing multiple tickets in one morning instead of just one ticket. So that helps kind of spread the cost around a little bit. Mr. Hall, I'm looking at this ordinance. I don't see a date when it was passed. The ordinance directly in front of it was from 1994. So I suspect it's probably from 94.
Mr. Gross, you had a question?
Yeah, this is for the city manager. Again, because I have some experience in it.
Yes.
Do you just issue the citation? Do you make a determination whether it's citation only? If it's a, to what degree you want to file, whether it's going to go in front of the,
the magistrate?
Magistrate, right? Or in front of a judge?
Yeah, so we started out only writing tickets for the very serious and complicated stuff, mostly to do with landlords in the mobile home parks. So that's where we started writing tickets. We then had a couple of people who just absolutely refused. They wanted to be contrarian for some reason. So we had a couple of citizens in there as well. You are correct that we are now getting to a point where we really should probably be writing some of these for the magistrate. And that was something I was thinking about today, is we're going to make a separation between what goes in front of the judge and what goes to the magistrate, because that would reduce our costs.
You have the right to request an informal or a formal hearing, as you know, I'm sure.
Yep.
And the other question I had for you was that you've mentioned that each citation would be increasing in severity?
Yes, so if we write them a ticket for the same offense, we can make it a second offense, which would then increase the severity of the fine.
Okay, and see, that's the part I'm kind of wondering about, because a lot of times they will fine for the person if it's within a period of time. You have to set it up. If it was the same issue 3 times in a row in a 6-month period, they're going to hit them for first offense on each one of them, because that's still the first offense. But again, you probably know more than I, being in the law, but that's what I've found, that they look at them as the first offense until they've corrected it. And after a period of time, if they do it again, and they say within a year's time, then there's a second offense and it can move up to the higher penalty. So that's dealing with the township. I don't know how it'll work with the city, so.
Yeah, that's dealing with the courts. But every municipal law is written this way.
And it determines whether or not there's a final judgment, not us. And I can tell you from having had a ticket written, this was 2 city managers ago, but we had a ticket written for parking in our driveway to go to court. And we went to court and it was dismissed. So just because the city says this is what it is, if it goes to court, the judge makes the determination.
It depends on
I mean, we can have our fines, but if we take it to court and a judge says, no, that's not what it is, we can't decide that it is.
In my opinion, I think we need a little more discussion, and maybe Jerry and Mike could talk a little bit more about this, and we could bring it for maybe a possible vote next month. But we do need to update this situation.
It's past due.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm really not comfortable right now voting on it.
Okay, I guess I will bring it back to you guys for next month. And I really, really would like to hear from anybody who has thoughts or objections on this. I guess make the time to come and chat with me, because I think it's pretty straightforward, but maybe I'm not seeing what you guys are saying.
I'd also like to kind of include the shoveling the snow off the sidewalks in this whole situation.
Any of your rules and regulations or civil infraction can be included.
Yeah, okay. It's really complicated.
Ms. Powell, the failure to remove snow from the sidewalk is already a municipal civil infraction. Mm-hmm. And so if you fail to remove snow from the adjoining sidewalks next to your house, the city can issue a municipal civil infraction. But that is never a popular thing to do. And you'd be surprised how many 85-year-old ladies will call me up and say, well, I can't do it, so what are you going to do? It's never a popular thing to do. And we always, always, always give a warning first.
Oh, sure.
So I understand that we might be getting snow this week, and there are a number of businesses out there that received warnings during the last snowfall. So if they're not shoveling their snow during this upcoming storm, they might be getting tickets.
And it's not real popular to see these kids having to walk in the streets on the way to school because there's so much snow on the sidewalks.
Right. Are we moving on? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we can move to 8D under discussion items. It is water and sewer automatic rate increases. And I believe Mr. Womack probably has something on this.
Yep. So this is something that the finance director and I were working on last year. It kind of fell by the wayside with all the COVID and other stuff that we've dealt with this year. So under the city's current ordinances, the city council has to adopt resolutions for the water and sewer rates. What this does is it changes it to an automatic increase each year based on the rate of inflation. So if you guys will recall, just before I came on board in, I think, late 2015, this board passed a 30% rate increase. And the reason for that was because for the 10 years prior, there had been very little or no adjustments. But you simply cannot operate a water and sewer system with no rate increases. You just can't do it. That's how you hemorrhage money. So What this ordinance would do is it would increase the rates year to year, either 2% or the rate of, I think it's the Midwest rate of inflation based on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And it gives the finance director the authority to make that decision and increase the rates accordingly. However, it does retain the rights of council to make any other changes if they wish possible by resolution, which is the same way you guys do it now. So if you decide you do not want to raise the rates, you could pass a resolution saying we choose not to raise the rates. But this will help eliminate the problem that was faced for 10 years where the rates just were not keeping up with inflation. So that's what's being proposed.
Any questions or discussions?
Well, that's something I can certainly support. It's hard to, go along and all of a sudden have a 30% gain, just keep it consistently every year. If we need it, if we need to, make a resolution to make it even more, we can, but this is water and sewer. If without those, we have nothing. No business, no schools, no homes. We have to keep it in ship shape.
No protection.
Right. And we can't get loans, I understand. That USDA meeting I went to, when you go to get a loan for any of this stuff, you better be on top of this water sewer situation.
Ms. Falcon or Mr. LaRose, do you have any input regarding this?
I think we need to do it. A lot of our system, just like well number 3, is aging, and when it comes due, we need to have the money available to take care of it.
I would also just like to say, having been on the council back when we were having that difficulty, I remember, and this was not Miss Falcon, this was a prior treasurer, but saying, we were deeply concerned that we weren't financially maintaining our water infrastructure. And the person came to us and said, okay, I have 3 options for you, none of which actually got us to the place we needed to be. And as I recall, Ms. Nixon and I actually increased the amount of what was presented in a motion in a second, because by I can't remember, I want to say it was like a nickel, because it wasn't enough. And I really feel like having an internal mechanism that keeps it at pace every year is quite critical. Because if you check back on it once every 5 years or whatever it is that happens, it just gets away.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I came in prepared tonight to move 3 of these subjects from discussion to action items. This is one of those. I believe we have talked about this long enough and hard enough. I would like to make a motion that we move the water and sewer automatic rate increases to an action item and have a vote on it tonight.
As much as I would love to do that, we do have, I believe, notice and reading requirements that we have to apply. So I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I would ask that we put this up for vote at the next meeting.
Nice try.
I give up.
I know.
Then, I guess if the motion is made and passed tonight to set the stage for you to proceed with those following requirements, is that so?
I'm hearing everyone say that they're in favor of it. And frankly, at this point, I don't need anything else. I'll put it on your agenda for passage at your next meeting.
Thank you. Being on the other side of the table on this for over many, many years, having not enough funds to even support the system, and not to mention coming down the road, Eagle is going to be requiring much more testing and requirements upon us. So it's very diligent that we do need to pass this. Thank you. Moving on then, I believe, to item 9, communications. Any questions or concerns on communications this evening?
So I'll briefly address some of these things. Mr. Hopkins has decided to resign from the DDA, which is one of the reasons we've appointed somebody to the DDA. I will continue to thank Mr. Hopkins. He's been one of our greatest volunteers. He served on a number of boards. He's done a great job over the last 5-10 years here in the community. I put in here item E, local state of emergency. So one of the council members asked if they had to appear in person today. I do apologize. I probably should have clarified that for everybody. The OMA law has been extended through the end of March, I believe. So nobody has to appear at City Hall until the end of March. As you'll recall, you've also adopted an electronic meeting policy. I'm assuming every person who didn't come to City Hall is located in the city of Cedar Springs. But we can discuss our options after March. Either the mayor can declare a state of emergency, or based on the current law, every person who is unable to attend the meeting might have developed a very light cough that, you know, they might think that they're sick. And based on that, they would not have to attend the meeting in person. So we'll discuss it again come the March meeting, but that's kind of the basics right now. The hope is that the state of Michigan will continue to extend that into the future, but you know, the legislature is what the legislature is. The big announcement today, as you saw in the post, is the free Wi-Fi. That's actually been installed now for almost 2 weeks, but we wanted to make that announcement today to coincide with your meeting. I think there are a lot of positives on Facebook about this. I had one guy ask why we didn't install it somewhere indoors. Donna Clark, is there any place that you're aware of that there's indoor Wi-Fi available? Maybe she nodded off. Okay. So the library has indoor Wi-Fi. It's free and available to use. So if you need indoor, you can go there. If you'd like to use outdoor Wi-Fi, Morley Park in the heart of Cedar Springs now have it. So those are my comments, I guess.
Moving on, I believe, then to department reports. Was that your report, Mr. Womack?
I think I've said enough. It's been another good month. I was at the fire station building today with Miss Judy Reed. She took a few pictures. I think she's going to put together another story. Things are great here in the community, and I'm very, very appreciative of not only my staff, but the good boards that I get to work with.
You will see that the fire station is behind me in my Zoom picture. And it's coming along very nicely, and I'm very excited about it. Also, we were able to get our firefighters their first vaccine, which is very exciting. And I'm hopeful that we also got our police that. Mr. Sergeant Probst was gonna respond to that. I think I asked you, Mr. Womack, and you said that he would be able to tell me?
Yep. So I did ask him last time we talked, and at that time, the Kent County Sheriff's Department had not received their vaccines. He might have an update for us tonight. And Mr. Fraser, have you raised your hand for a reason?
Yes, I comment on Mrs. Connolly's comment about the COVID vaccine. 15 out of 20 firefighters received their first shot, and all but 3 have received their second shot, and them 3 will be next week, Monday or Tuesday. Very, very, very minor side effects. I highly recommend it, but I also would like to put out there, if you're going to consider getting it, please check with your doctor first.
Thank you.
I'm just very glad that our people who are running into buildings taking out sick people are going to be protected. That's really important. And I hope that our police can get it soon. I know that in the beginning of the pandemic, the police, law enforcement were some of the hardest hit people and some of the first people that passed away. So hopefully that can happen. I am hoping to get my appointment this next week as a teacher. So hooray. So it's coming as we talk about continuing to have Zoom meetings.
Any other questions of the fire chief or the city clerk? Financial director, Mrs. Falcon? Any other questions or concerns on code enforcement, building inspection, or boards and commission minutes? I think we're into council comments at this time. Mrs. Conley, you have any additional to add?
I'm very excited about the fire station, and I like the library we talked about. We worked on that for a really long time. This also was a very long time coming, and Marty, I am so honored that you have been able to see this through with us. You've worked so hard for this, you and your firefighters, to keep our community safe. And I'm so glad and grateful that we can make this facility happen so that you can continue to keep our community safe as we move forward. That's been huge. We just have the most wonderful fire department, and I'm glad that we can get them a facility to meet the community needs in a way that really needed to happen.
Thank you. Ms. Atchison.
Just thank our city workers again for everything they do. Enjoying the look of the fire station. I just think that the more we can do to draw people downtown and try and get businesses in, the better. We don't want to be outside looking in. So I thank the city manager for looking into everything that's a possibility to get more people downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, to everybody. I would like to say, the more we prepare for these meetings before we come in, the more rapid in manner we'll be able to attain our business to be done. Not saying that everybody does, but I think there's maybe some more research that could be done that hasn't been done. I would also like to thank, although they're probably not on right now, the Cub Scouts for wanting to participate in the meeting for a short time, and wish them well in their search for their badges. Thank you.
Mrs. Nixon.
Well, just as always, thank you to everyone who makes the things happen on a governmental level. It's not easy, and I appreciate the work. Also, I'm thrilled that the Cub Scouts were able to join us. They're welcome back anytime. Thank you.
I think is that it, Ms. Nixon?
That is all.
Thank you. Moving on to Mrs. Powell.
If you get a chance to drive by the fire station at night, it's really very well lit. It looks really sharp. And I guess one thing I forgot to do is thank all the citizens of Cedar Springs that voted for me. Over 839 votes. And I hope I do my best to serve our city. And the way me and my family love our city, we'll do our best. And hopefully I get the 4 years that I was elected for. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And also try to give blood any chance you can, because we really need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Mrs. Ray.
Thank you to all of the city employees, especially the city manager. I know he does a lot of work. He spends a lot of time trying to make this city better, and I think everyone is seeing that, and everyone obviously at City Hall that works very hard, and we're excited to have all these new planning commission members joining, and I think that's all I have. Happy 2021, right?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here this evening too. I know some of the times the meeting gets carried on. We've had some lengthy meetings in the Planning Commission also. A lot of good discussion going on, a lot of good input, and that's what makes the city the way it is. I thank the staff, Mr. Womack, for all his diligence putting up with us. And in the future, you know, we have a lot of growing to do, and hopefully we will all grow in the right direction and make this great community prosper. We stand adjourned. Thank you all. All right. Mr. Wall owns that property.